Welcome to Wavemakers, the podcast where we dive into the stories of bold thinkers, trailblazers, and innovators who are making waves in their communities, industries, and beyond. Together, we'll explore the ideas, challenges, and victories of people who are shaping the future. At Wavemakers, we bring you thought-provoking conversations with those who are pushing the boundaries, defying expectations, and creating impact in their own unique ways. While we're proudly produced by Rio Salado College, a place that values lifelong learning and community impact, this podcast isn't just about education. It's about real-world stories of passion, perseverance, and progress. So, if you're ready to dive deep into the big ideas and get inspired by those who are making waves, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome to our next edition of Wavemakers. I am Michelle Reese, and I am your podcast host for today. We are welcoming back, I may say, a former Rio Salado student who is an inspiration to many of us here. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about her Rio journey, when she got started, her degree, and then we'll go into what she's doing now. So welcome, Kesha.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate you all having me. Again, I'm Kesha Shelton. I usually go by Kesha for short.
Well, tell me a little bit about your Rio Salado journey. When did you get started, and what is your degree in, and when did you graduate?
Okay, so I started Rio Salado in the fall of 2022. I majored in early childhood education. I received my associates from Rio. And what was the last question? I'm sorry.
When did you graduate?
Oh, I graduated actually May of 24.
Wow.
Yes, May of 24. And I actually was the Graduate Marshal that day, so it was an extra special experience.
It was such a fun day. I remember seeing you and your family, and they were just absolutely overjoyed for you.
Ecstatic. They were super excited and just very happy for me.
Now, I know you've got, I believe, 2 young boys at home. Tell me a little bit about family life.
Okay, so I am a mother of 3 children. I have a daughter that is a senior this year in high school, and I also have 2 sons that are elementary students. One is in 5th grade and the other is in 3rd grade. So yes, my life is very busy with being a mom and, being a student and working. But yeah, they definitely keep me very busy.
Well, as you think back to that, going back to 22, you're a single mom, you've got kids, you're working. What did it feel like when you hit that enroll button, when you said, you know what, I'm doing this? How did you feel?
I was super excited. I was waiting until a few things behind the scenes in order for me to get enrolled. So every day I was just waiting until the moment was right. And when I finally was able to enroll, I just was very grateful. I was very grateful to be able to be enrolled back in school and just being able to embark upon a new journey, and not a little unsure of myself, but just being very optimistic about what the future held. But I was really excited.
You said you were waiting for the moment to be right. I imagine everything wasn't perfectly aligned. How did you feel walking into school knowing, maybe some things were left undone, or were you just ready to go?
I was ready to go. It was a couple of months of waiting until I could get things in order, the way I needed them to be in order for me to get started my classes. And once I got the green light and met with a few advisors and, buckled down and determined what I wanted my major to be, that was when I knew I was ready. I did a little bit of, searching as in regards to finalizing my major and met with different, advisors. And then once I finally narrowed it down and I realized what I wanted to do, then it, became to be more, like real, like it was really happening.
Walk me through that experience. Tell me a little bit about what people may not have seen, what was going on behind the scene as you tried to balance school and work. What was it like at home?
So I would take my children to school. I did, obviously Rio is online. So I would, make some kind of breakfast and then I would sit down. And a lot of times I was sitting down almost like a regular, typical work day, sitting down from like 8 o'clock to maybe 4:30, 5. Um, just working very diligently, just working, all the way through, maybe, getting up, taking a stretch break, maybe grabbing a quick bite to eat. But for the most part, I knew very early on I had to be very diligent in my efforts and be very meticulous with the way that I essentially curated my day. So as far as being on a set schedule, still flexible, allowing for life, but I did have to be very disciplined and make sure that I followed a similar routine every day, I would say.
That probably made all the difference, but okay, let's get a little real. Were there times you thought, what am I doing? And how did you get yourself through that?
I had some moments, where I would be, burn out. It felt like I was burning the candle at both ends. Maybe one of my children might have been sick and I had to step away from my studies, and because I'm a parent first, I'm a parent first and I'm a mother first before anything, before I'm an employee, before I'm a student. But the thing that I like about Rio Salado is that I can do it on my own time. I've done in-person school before and it's not really my cup of tea, but it is something that is really important to know what kind of learner you are and to know what kind of lifestyle that you have. And so I honestly will say that the structure that Rio Salado has in place, it gave me the foundation in order for me to be successful. It left room for life. It left room for the unexpected. It left room for those days where I just want to crawl in bed and just put my covers over my head. The online school, it was really the best option for me, especially with me being an adult learner and raising a family and also, working as well. So Rio Salado just worked very well with me as a person individually.
If you were to look back at, a younger self, knowing what you know now and what you've gone through, what advice would you have given yourself?
Look at the rubric. Look at the rubric when your teachers and your instructors, when they ask you to, have some form of assessment or to express your understanding of a concept, and they have a specific rubric and they tell you what you need to do in order to get, full credit or also to be able to have, I guess your work would be considered like exemplar. So I would say look at the rubric. And the other thing that I feel like is really important, even now, with me being in school again, is take some time before the semester and just introduce yourself with your teachers. Just say, hey, I don't know if you have time or not. Is there any chance I could meet with you just for a Zoom meeting right before class or before, classes begin? Because with online, it's a little bit different. You're not going to the classes in person. So you really have to assert yourself in order to establish a rapport with your instructors and your professors. So I would definitely say, just break down that wall of communication and start to get to know the people that you encounter along your journey educationally.
You and I have talked before, and you've encountered a lot of people at Rio that have really provided a great deal of support. Tell me, first of all, how you made those connections and then how that helped you get through.
So I would say I started to become more present on campus. I would say that last semester, um, I decided to go ahead and take like an honors class, and that brought me on campus. So I was able to attend, I think it was a Phoenix symphony or symphony orchestra. And I was able to meet, different staff members. And then there was like that last month and a half, and I was just coming on campus. And I know, like, because Rio Salado is online, I know that it's very seldom that you actually see, actual students in real life, in the flesh. And the staff and faculty members that I was able to interact with, they all were very welcoming to me. They greeted me, and I was coming almost like every day, going to the library, going to go eat in the cafe, or going to go sit in common areas or sitting outside, and even down to just meeting with some of the counselors that were there. But I would say just stepping away from the comforts of my home and just going on campus, it allowed them to put a name with the face, and so that was a really, really big deal. But yeah, I've met some amazing people that have been like super supportive and just cheering me on and motivating me, and it's been great.
When you talk about that motivation, during those times that maybe you felt you lacked the motivation, what did you do to help get yourself through that?
So one of the biggest things that I do even now is I time travel. I time travel to the future, and I have to put myself in that mindset, like, why are you doing this? What do you hope to achieve? So I think about being able to provide better for my children, being able to be an example to them. My children and I, we oftentimes in the evenings, we're doing homework together. We're sitting in the living room, we're sitting at different desks. I'm helping them. I'm working on homework. And so I think by me leading an example, they see like a sacrifice, but they also see the worth and the value of an education. So I look into the future and I see myself in the career that I want. I see myself eventually purchasing a home for my children. I see myself being able to have financial stability. And I also envision being able to pass down generational wealth to my children and, my future, lineage for my family. So I think you have to not get stuck in the now, but think about later on. It's very easy to, be like, oh, woe is me, or just to be, I would say maybe a little disillusioned that time, but you have to just keep focused with your goal is. Like, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Like, every day is not going to be, easy or sunshine and butterflies. You're going to have those days where you're crying. You're going to have those days where you're upset. You're going to have those days where nothing seems to be going right. But the one thing I can honestly say is that with life and it ever changing, the one thing that was consistent for me was being in school. That was my sense of normalcy. That was my center, being in school and logging onto the computer.
You've just made such an accomplishment. We haven't even touched on where you are now and what happened when you left Rio. Tell me a little bit about the last year.
OMG. So yeah, it's definitely been a year. It doesn't even feel like it's been a year, but it has. So I am now studying at Arizona State University. I am majoring in justice studies, and I just added another major. I added a double major of mass communications and media studies. I was able to get into Barrett, the honors college. I have a almost 4.0, like 3.93 GPA. So I'm working on the 4.0 again. I did have a 4.0 when I graduated from Rio as well. So I'm just keeping up the momentum, and I'm taking some awesome classes right now. So things are going really great.
You went to ASU with quite a goal in mind. Tell me, what did it take to get you there? Scholarships, advising. I'm sure there was a long list. And when did you start planning that?
So the main the main event that happened that allowed me to see beyond Rio Salado and figure out the next step was when I was recognized by Phi Theta Kappa and the Arizona Board of Regents, and I was selected at Rio Salado as the All Arizona Scholarship recipient. And so that allowed for me to have my tuition taken care of as far as, the time that I'm at ASU. And I'm always applying for, grants and different scholarships, ones that I, am applicable for. So that has been definitely, helpful. But I was so grateful to have been recognized. When I saw the scholarship and I applied for it, I wasn't really sure if I had a chance or if I was going to get it. I just felt like it couldn't hurt just to at least try. And I was able to get it. I was actually leaving work one day, and Karen, she called me, and I wasn't able to talk when she initially called. And so when I got out of work, I was returning her phone call, and she basically told me the great news. And I'll never forget that day. Like, it just touched my heart, like, in so many ways. And I really appreciate Rio Salado for believing in me and seeing something that maybe I didn't see in myself. Oftentimes you can get, I guess, stuck in this habit of just, doing your classes, turning in your assignments, but sometimes we don't think outside the box of like possibilities, like what's after Rio Salado. And I hadn't really thought about it because, it's not easy, going to school without having some supports in place. And, the cost of living up here in the, area is definitely always increasing. And school costs money. It costs money to be able to pour into yourself academically and pour into yourself professionally. So I think that with having certain measures in place that make it a viable option for me to be able to go to school and feasible, it seems more attainable at that moment, having those supports in place.
I do want to touch a little bit on what you said about those supports. We've had discussions. I know you've had the supports from Rio. You've also done a tremendous job resourcing the community for supports, and then in turn have really started mentoring others. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so I definitely owe much gratitude to Dress for Success Phoenix. I was able to receive the support while I was in school at Rio Salado. I'm going to circle back to them, but I want to just name off a few more organizations. I definitely want to thank the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona, and I also would like to thank Live and Learn Arizona. But circling back to Dress for Success Phoenix, they were super helpful to me even before I got into Rio Salado. When I first moved to the area, I had all my stuff like in storage. I was still, getting settled, and I was able to obtain, additional professional apparel for interviews and, professional clothing while I was on the job. And so when I found out that they were helping support a cohort of single mothers, the Pathways for Single Mothers program, like, it had my name all over it. I couldn't, not apply for it. So I was selected within a special cohort of women, and they provided us, support, all the way around, from taking care of our tuition, our books, making sure that we could make ends meet, making sure we had wraparound services as far as case management. They even gave us a laptop, a brand new laptop so we could, get started. So I definitely I met other women that were in school. I met other women who had similar experiences as we were balancing motherhood and being adult students and also trying to work and also trying to maintain a household. And so they were just amazing, amazing. And with the support of the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona, I had some really great opportunities. I was actually asked and invited to go and speak at a hearing at the state capitol. I was able to meet Representatives Matt Gress and Judy Schweibert, and I spoke on behalf of early childhood and just child care subsidies in support of that. So never before would I have imagined that with me being affiliated and associated with different organizations that I would have the platform to be able to speak in public and speak at a government legislative hearing. So then after I spoke at that hearing, I was invited back a few months later, the following year, and I believe it was Young Children's Day or something of that sort. And I was invited to go again and speak at a press conference in support of early childhood funding and early childhood education funding. So it has just been amazing. Like, I'm really grateful. And then also it's twofold. I'm a parent. I've been able to, and I still do receive help as far as the child care subsidies for my own, elementary age children, but also with me being an early childhood education, major and practitioner, that was just, it was like the marrying of two different, wonderful ideas. Like, it was important that I was there. It was very important that I was there. So I'm glad that I was able to advocate for early childhood education.
I am definitely speaking to a passionate person, and I love that.
Thank you.
I've heard adult learner. I've heard mother. I've heard advocate. I've heard Rio Salado graduate. You talk about your future. What titles will you hope to be adding?
So ultimately, I would like to get a master's in educational leadership, K-12 principal. I would like to start out in a public school setting and being an administrator, starting off as an assistant principal, getting that, experience, and eventually becoming a principal. After getting that experience, I would like to move on to either being the director of an educational program at a detention center or at a correctional facility. Upon finishing that, I would like to go back and get a doctorate in educational policy. Some of the things I'm very passionate about is equity in education. I definitely want to disrupt the school to prison pipeline. And I also would like to close the achievement gap for communities and students that are marginalized and underserved. So really, education is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I know one of the biggest ways that you can create change is from the top. And so that is why I want to get into educational policy. So, every step is going to be a stepping stone.
You have outlined it beautifully.
Thank you.
These are incredible goals. I have no doubt that you are going to reach them.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Thank you for inspiring us. And I know the young people of the world are going to have a wonderful, fearless leader when you join their school system.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for our podcast. Please listen back at Wavemakers. And if you have any questions, you can find us at riosalado.edu.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Kesha.